A very good afternoon, and you're very welcome along to the second of our Midlands Northwest constituency EU debates. As you may know, the constituency comprises the counties of Donegal, Cavan, Galway, Kildare, Leitrim, Longford, Louth, Mayo, Meath, Monaghan, Roscommon, Sligo and Westmeath, and the city of Galway. There are 5 seats with a huge field of 27 candidates contesting for your votes. Don't forget, if you wish to take part in the conversation here, you can comment on our social media feeds. We are, of course, live on YouTube, Highland Radio Ireland, and across our Facebook pages and on the X platform. And you can also continue to text the show on 086 60 25,000. Okay, we'll say good morning now to, or good afternoon, in fact, to those joining us today. And we'll say good morning first to Lisa Chambers of Fianna Fáil. Lisa, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I actually just cannot hear you there, Lisa. I think that might be a problem on my end. I will come back to that. I wonder, can I hear you? Peadar, are you there?
Hey, good afternoon there. How are you getting on?
Okay, no problem. I'll resolve the situation with Lisa in a moment. Peadar, standing for Aontu, of course, you are the Aontu's leader. Why should people vote for you?
Yeah, I believe that Aontu is the only political party that's actually listening to the people at the moment. There's a range of different issues, bread and butter issues that are, in the hearts of people. The government are distracted in many ways by the culture wars. And the reason why we're standing is to crowbar those bread and butter issues back onto the political agenda. One of the big issues I have in this country at the moment is that we live in a lopsided country. Ireland is developing into a city-state. We have an overheating capital. We have people living in a commuter belt that nearly stretches into Connacht, Ulster and Munster. And then we have regional Ireland that's emptying of its young people. And even the population of Letterkenny on average is about 10 years more than the population of Balbriggan. And one of the big objectives that we in Aontu have is to properly invest into the infrastructure of regional and rural Ireland so that we have more business, more employment, higher population growth, and a proper rebalancing of the country. Also, we're fighting for farmers in a big way. We think that farmers are in the middle of a perfect storm currently. You have on one side a higher input costs in terms of the price and cost of doing farming, but we also have a massive onslaught of regulation and paperwork that's hurting farmers currently. And at the same time, the government and the Green Party especially are focusing on cutting back productivity in farms. And as a result, only about a third of farmers are making a living off the farm, which is an incredible situation.
Okay.
So there's some of the issues that we're focusing on.
And we'll tease through them, of course, as the hour progresses. Justin Barrett of the National Party, good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Why are you choosing to contest these elections?
Well, there's obviously, and with any given election, there's a number of reasons why one chooses to stand. But in particular, I'm here to say the word mass immigration. They must be dealt with. I think Peadar's referring to it as the culture wars. Well, it very much is the culture wars, because we're talking about a level of mass immigration in this country which has now reached population replacement levels. And we have small rural communities right throughout the Midlands Northwest, and indeed the entire of the 26 counties state, where the communities are being forced to accept sometimes a number of asylum seekers, or presumed asylum seekers, that are in excess of the population of the local area, or make a very significant impact on the population of the local area. And that hits on the services that we're talking about. It hits upon the availability of doctors. It hits upon the availability of school places. It hits upon the availability of housing. It hits upon the availability of every single service that is provided by the state or provided by the government to the local community. And the ability of the government, with the best will in the world, and I'm not sure the government does have the best will in the world, but with the best will in the world, it is not possible to solve the housing crisis where in a scenario in which you have unlimited immigration.
Okay.
And that's what we have.
Yeah, and I'm sure...
and unless it stops, then all of the other problems are unsolvable.
Yeah, I think we can... I think we'll be teasing that out over the course of the next hour as well. Lisa Chambers, hopefully I can hear you now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Greg, and thanks for having me on.
No, it's our pleasure. It's great to have all of you as a part of this. You know, I suppose as succinctly as possible before we get into a conversation, Lisa Chambers, what do you bring, or what do you feel you would bring if elected to Europe?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. So I'm living in the west of Ireland, so I know our region very, very well. I've been in elected politics now for 10 years at local and national level. For the best part of that decade, I have worked on European briefs for Fianna Fáil. I was our party's defence spokesperson. I was the lead opposition spokesperson on Brexit during the key period for our country. And I'm now my party's European and Foreign Affairs spokesperson. I'm legally trained as a barrister in EU law, and I'm a member of the Oireachtas European Affairs Committee. So I think I'm qualified for the job, and I think I can hit the ground running in terms of using my experience at local and national politics and that to the European Parliament to represent our region. I think it's fair to say, and not just to, it's very easy to acknowledge or outline the challenges, and we know what they are. But it's very easy to outline those. So we do have a deficiency in infrastructure. I think there are huge economic opportunities for our region if we have the right people representing us. And we have, I think, over the years lacked senior leadership in the region, at the highest levels. So we need people at the table, basically, where the decisions are being made, representing the place where we live. And that's really important. And I know...
How are you?
Some of the candidates on the call don't actually want the job.
Doing an interview as we speak.
I think Ciaran needs to...
Yes, and I've just done that. Sorry, Lisa, to interrupt.
So the point I was making is that I'm contesting these elections because I actually want to serve my full 5-year term. I want to be an MEP for the region. I think that question should be asked of candidates. If you're putting yourself forward, do you actually want the job? I have a proven track record of work on European issues, a proven track record of interest in European issues. And I hope to bring my experience to the table, represent our region and deliver for the West and Northwest. Yeah,
okay. And as I say, we'll find out what others as well plan to do. Dr. Brian O'Boyle is standing for People Before Profit. A very good morning to you, Brian. Thank you for joining us. And I suppose I'll put the same question to you in a minute or two. What do you bring to the equation if elected?
Good morning, Greg, and good morning to the listeners. Yeah, listen, first of all, thanks for having us on. I've been an economist for probably 20 years now. And one of the things that teaches you is the fact that Ireland is a vastly wealthy country. Europe is one of the wealthiest regions in the world. It has vast talents, lots of people with like social and economic talents. And yet, anywhere I go, you just hear, Lisa says that we shouldn't focus on it. But to my mind, we have to acknowledge that there are deep crises for people. There was a report recently that says only 8% of young people in university feel that they have good mental health, for example. We've been doing hustings with farmers. And as Peadar says, small and medium farmers feel absolutely squeezed. They feel like they're being hit by the major corporations, and then they're being asked to do too much around regulation. And so Europe is a vastly wealthy place. I think a lot of mainstream politicians have managed decline for some sections of society at the expense of others. There's been a real funneling of wealth and power up towards the top. Trade union rights have weakened, for example. Corporate rights have strengthened. And in that picture, then, what we have is a really, I think, an increasingly unequal society, but also a more and more angry society. And in that mix, you have people who are rightly angry about being left behind, people who feel that the game is rigged against them. But then you have also snake oil salesmen who say all our problems are about migration. And so I think it's very important to start with the facts. Number one, migrants... Can we
get into that? Exactly. So just if you wanted to say something else... No, it's no problem, Brian. I just want to make sure then everyone gets a say at the time. Ciaran Mullooly, good morning to you, Ciaran. Thank you very much for joining us. I suppose if you want
to Greg. It's
outline to the listeners who you are and what you offer.
Yeah, good afternoon, Greg. Thank you very much, firstly, for the invitation to take part in the programme. Apologies for my problems with broadband. It's one of the problems of rural Ireland, I'm afraid. Can you hear me okay now?
Continue, yep, loud and clear.
Yeah, so I suppose I'm 57 years old, Greg. I'm a former journalist and broadcaster. Many people in County Donegal will know me from my career in television and radio. But many other people in Donegal, particularly in the Lions Club movement, in Letterkenny and Donegal Town, Ballybofey, will know I've also been involved in community development work over the course of the last 30 years, specifically in areas of rural development, working in the areas of isolation for older people, farming projects, rural development projects, suicide awareness projects. I'm coming to this election after an invitation from Michael Fitzmaurice, TD, the Independent Ireland TD, a man who's made his own name in rural Ireland for standing up for people in rural areas, particularly small farmers, as he did during the turf cutting situation a number of years ago. Michael came to me a number of months back and said to me that he was consistently raising issues in Dáil and frustrated by the fact that legislation was coming before the Dáil from Europe, which clearly had not been scrutinised, had not been read, had not been challenged. He put it to me that he needed somebody, a set of eyes and a voice in Europe to actually represent not just his view, but the view of rural Ireland with regard to some pretty devastating changes that are coming down the line from Brussels. So over the course of the last 4 weeks, I'm delighted to say I had a chance to meet the people of Donegal in the farming industry and in the fishing industry. And I think at this stage, as I'm sure we're going to discuss today, I'm very aware of the major issues with regard to the Norwegian quota issues, the farming issues that are prevalent in the county at the moment. And I'm prepared to listen to people and do what I can to change it in the future.
Okay, we'll come back to you. So, Lisa Chambers, in terms of sort of having that seat at the table and making that difference, I suppose on the issue of farming and fishing, and I apologise, I know both industries would like, individual ministers and may not appreciate me grouping them, but for the interests of time, you can maybe weed between them. What do you hope and commit to deliver for those involved in the farming and fishing industries?
Yeah, we actually have the fishing sector hustings tomorrow evening in Killybegs, so I'll be at that, as I'm sure other colleagues will as well, and looking forward to having an in-depth discussion on that sector in particular. But look, the vast majority, when we look at overall funding from the European Parliament and the European Union, the bulk of it comes through the Common Agricultural Policy, which deals with farming and fishing and funds rural communities as well. The challenge for us as an agricultural and fishing country is that not every member state shares our enthusiasm for those sectors. They are focused in other areas. So in the next European Parliament term, we will negotiate the next multi-financial annual framework, which is the EU budget. That's coming into play in 2027. But negotiations will start in the new Parliament term in the tail end of this year. When that budget is settled, we will then be looking to, like a national budget, we'll be looking to see what the CAP gets out of that budget. That's where the role of your MEP is crucially important. Having somebody that's living in the west of Ireland, that knows the region and is from a rural area, advocating to make sure that
we know we need more quota, right? And we need to support our farmers and not legislate them out of business. So what can an MEP do? I'm sorry to sort of make it sound more simpler than it is, but what can an MEP actually do to try and, not talk about it and represent, but actually improve the situation?
Well, MEPs need to deliver a properly funded CAP. So that involves working with other MEPs and like-minded member states that actually value agriculture and fishing. We need to have a simplified CAP so that schemes are not difficult to get into and you don't need a PhD to apply for them. So that's the message I'm getting back our farmers as I've been travelling around, is that the basic schemes like acres, like the ANC, the basic payment, that they're difficult to actually put the application in. There needs to be increased funding because the true value of those payments has gone down over time. The quotas is a big challenge as well. So I think it's delivering a simplified CAP, making sure it's properly funded, and that when we are approaching the environmental aspects of it, because CAP started off as producing sustainable food at a good price but paying farmers properly, okay? There's a massive environmental element to it now that that's just there. But it's about making sure that the funding stream for the environmental asks of farmers and fishing communities is properly funded.
But can any of that stuff that's just there not be undone? Like for instance, the nitrates directive that's just come in there, farmers would feel that, look, they've made great inroads in improving how they farm. There was great improvements in water quality, I think particularly down in the southwest of the county. None of that was taken into consideration. So can you undo, do you feel that you could undo or have any wish to undo some of that, those regulations that are making it very difficult for farmers?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is simplify the CAP and simplify the schemes. And in terms of the derogation, we have to do our very best to hang on to that derogation. When we go back to seek the extension of that derogation, we will be the only member state looking for it. Okay, we're looking for a special treatment, but we're advocating that we're a grass-based system. We are unique in how we farm, and we have to convince other member states that that we are a special case. So having MEPs.
Well, Minister McConalogue, your party colleague, said that where we're at now, the fight is to maintain that in terms of nitrates directives. That there's no going back.
And he's been very honest as well with, and the farming organisations know this, that we do need to address water quality in conjunction with that. But what farmers have said back is that they're doing it. I believe they are. We have some of the most sustainable farmers in the country in the west of Ireland.
Yep.
But in terms of the water quality, it takes time. The measures that we are implementing, that farmers are implementing, it takes time to see the benefits of that.
I'll come back to you. Justin Barrett of the National Party, what would you do for fishers and farmers?
Well, let's be realistic here, because once we get past the legalistic jargon, and Lisa knows that very well, she's very adept at using the wording of European law and using the terminology that makes it sound like a member of the European Parliament has far more power than they actually have. Now, Europe, as in the European Union, they have considerable power over this. But the reality is, let's just take the European Parliament specifically, is Ireland has 14 members out of 720. Now, that's our influence within the European Parliament. But how the European Union decision-making process works is that the European Parliament itself is somewhat sidelined in that decision-making process. All legislation at EU level originates in the Commission. Now, that has nothing to do with these elections. And nobody who is elected on a platform in this constituency or in any other on June the 7th can influence the Commission in that sense, except any more than they could if they were an ordinary citizen and made their case.
So you're saying that you wouldn't have a stronger voice, a stronger lobbying voice out in Brussels as an elected MEP in terms of trying to influence decisions of the Commission as I might. So what's the point?
What I'm saying is it's important not to exaggerate this, and it's important to understand that what we really need to talk about, again, that's how the EU Commission functions. Then the real decisions are made at the Council of Ministers. And the Council of Ministers, again, is separate from the European Parliament. So what we need, and this fundamentally, is a return to Ireland of the sovereign powers that we have traded to the European Union, so that we can get back to a situation where Ireland has influence. And we are looking at a scenario, and certainly I would like to be part of that scenario, where there is a surge to the right all across Europe. And that surge is also a surge towards sovereignty rights, towards nationalism, towards the idea that the nation states of the European Union should not be subjected to the European Union, should not be submissive to the European Union, but should be full decision makers in their own right within their own nation states. And so what I would be doing is allying myself, if I were to be elected, and I don't believe I will be elected, but if I were to be elected,
hi Caroline,
realistically speaking, but if I were to be elected, it would be to join those forces within the European Parliament which are pushing for less power to be held in Brussels and more power to be returned to the member states. And that's where we can be really effective. And that's where the Parliament...
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, Ciaran, sorry, just 1 second, Justin.
Really
Ciaran, we are actually live and active at the moment, so we're getting you 1, 2s, okay, if that's all right. I just don't want to interrupt other people as they're speaking, Ciaran, but thank you very much for being with us. Peadar, Toibin, do you, before you talk about what you hope you could deliver for fishers and farmers, do you believe that along the lines of Lisa Chambers, that you go over there, you can make a difference, or are you of the view of Justin Barrett that you have to be realistic with the public as to what one can achieve?
Well, I absolutely believe we can make a difference. Aontu is a campaigning political party. We believe that even having a platform gives you an opportunity to raise the profile and the concerns of individuals. I know from my long political history is that campaigning is really, really important. Feet on the streets, focusing in on the issues that are affecting people. People often ask me, who is the most powerful minister in Ireland? And I would say Minister Joe Duffy. And what I mean by that is even just bringing the human experience into the public eye and bringing that to the attention of people can help build up massive pressure on a political system for change. And, Lisa spoke about, what's wrong with farming, and she's right. But a lot of what's wrong with farming is because of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael governments. Unfortunately, they have been managing farming into decline for the last 20 years. Only a third of farmers are currently making a living off the farming. All the rest either have to work off the farm to supplement their income or are making an income.
So in
And the number of
is it
farmers-
sustainable then? I mean, if the farming industry can't stand on its own 2 feet without subsidy and supports, whether it's too rainy or it's too dry or whatever it might be, do we have to be realistic about the future of agriculture in this country?
Here's the major point, and it's key to this. There's lots of money in food. But unfortunately, in the supply chain, there are 3 players. There's factories, supermarkets, and farmers. Because of the lack of competition control in the market, the government is allowing the factories and supermarkets to make hundreds of millions of euros of profit and to pay tax at 2.5% in Luxembourg. A proper competition authority would actually calm the power of the factories and supermarkets and make sure that there's fair competition so that farmers could make an income. And that's a key objective to us. We have actually got a bill called the Equitable Beef Price Bill. Fianna Fáil supported it in opposition, and now they're in government, they're refusing to support it. And I actually brought it to Minister McConaughey's attention. And our bill says that there should be a floor at the price of beef at the cost of production. And Minister McConaughey said that it is unfair to expect a price above the cost of production for farmers. And I think that speaks volumes about where Fianna Fáil are in terms of farmers. And just in fishing, because I was in Killybegs there on Saturday, and it's incredible what's happened to fishing. And if people want to see what's going to happen to farmers over the next while, just look at fishing. Only 15% of the fish caught in Irish waters are now caught by Irish fishermen and fisherwomen. 85% of it goes to foreign trawlers. €1 billion are taken out in Irish fish every year by other countries. And currently in Killybegs, we have literally ships, indigenous and foreign, who won't pull into Killybegs because the level of regulation is threatening criminal sanctions against the owners of those boats if they make a mistake at all. And, you know, that's putting the fish processing factories out of business, and it's pushing for the closure of those boats. Right now, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens are decommissioning Irish boats, and they're ripping the heart out of the fishing industry. And that's going to be replicated in farming unless there's a change in the direction this country is going in.
Okay. Ciaran Mullooly, what is your... Mullooly, I beg your pardon. Sorry, my apologies, Ciaran. What is your view on what you could do, if anything, elected into Europe for our farmers and our fishers? And, of course, we'll get on to some of the stuff that, of course, each candidate's going to have things they're more interested in. I'll try and get to that, of course, over the course of the debate. But, you know, this is a vote-getter, Ciaran.
Yeah, Greg, when I was first asked to consider running for the European Parliament, the first thing I did was to go to Killybegs, to sit down with Dominic Rehan and Kieran Doherty from the Killybegs Fishermen's Association and ask them to focus on the two issues that were critical in terms of their industry at the moment. That particularly strong one, as I mentioned at the outset today, with regard to Norway coming in, the Norwegian boats coming in, that major problem with regard to overfishing and blue whiting was top of their agenda. They were looking at a small slice of their market remaining for them compared to the vast amount of fishing going on by the Norwegian authorities. They were not happy at all. They made it very clear to us that day that unless that situation, those side deals that are being done at Europe level, the side deals are killing us. That was the message that came from us. The second issue, as Peadar has quite rightly mentioned, when I went to the port side in Killybegs and I talked to the people there, they talked about the different regime that applies for some reason at Killybegs port. And they talked about the promises made by Charlie McConlogue when he became the minister to sort this out. They were told months and months ago that the regime, there would be equality for Irish boats alongside international boats coming in and alongside other international ports and other international harbours. They want the same standards that are applied throughout Scotland, throughout the UK, throughout other ports, because as they're losing business. And they made it very clear that they're frustrated, that they were promised this by Charlie McConlogue, they were promised there would be a follow-up, and they were promised that the side deal with the Norwegian boats would be looked at again, but it hasn't happened. And that's why they're very frustrated. And I have to say they're very bitter about the situation at the moment. That's my experience from the day I was there.
Yeah, no, I get you. Dr. Brian Boyle, I'll come to you last. I'm conscious of that, but I'll start our next topic with you as well, just to so it's as fair as possible. You know, obviously, particularly in our area, but I think exclusively, really, I think an awful lot across the entire constituency, fishing for us, but farming for an awful lot.
Yeah, look, I mean, we when I was working for People Before Profit up in the Dáil for a while, we had the privilege of meeting some of the farmers who had set up the beef plan movement, which was a grassroots attempt to try and replicate trade union rights for beef farmers. And they told us two things. First of all, they said that if you go on their website at the time, one of the prominent things was around suicide prevention, because the stress, the pressure that farmers were under was just incredible. And the second thing they said was, if you take 10 euros worth of beef, the farmer does about 90 to 95% of the work to create that 10 euros, but they only get rewarded with about 25% of the price. As Peadar said, the other 50% maybe goes to the retailer and the other 25% to the processor. Similarly in fishing, it's about margins. Like if the small and medium farmer, small and medium fishermen are doing almost all of the labor, but because of corporate power, the price that they receive is almost at base level, as others said, sometimes because of things like the cap, the big corporations abuse the fact that they're getting subsidies and push prices below the cost of production. That's a recipe for disasters in our communities. And you asked, do we just have to accept that? And I think there's a concept in Europe called multifunctionality. So, you can look at it purely from an economic perspective, but I would prefer to see the vast, attributes and contributions that these people are making to our rural life. So farmers and fishermen underpin rural culture, rural communities. They're the hubs around which the rest of the rural economy is working. So to my mind, and you've got food security. So there are a whole range of ways to see these issues. And I think you need representatives who are going to, first of all, acknowledge that we've had managed decline for small and medium farmers and fishermen, and secondly then argue that the way to tackle that is to take on corporate
Lisa
power.
Chambers, do you feel that sometimes maybe the point that Brian made there about farming and fishing not just being industries, but they're part of our culture, they're part of who we are, and the roots run much deeper than just production costs and profits and what have you? Do you think that's got in Dublin?
Well, look, I'm on record as being quite critical at times of often a very Dublin-centric approach from a lot of our departments. And, Greg, over the years, we've often lacked, I suppose, senior leadership in the region in terms of having somebody at the cabinet table. Obviously, we've got Charlie in Donegal, but nothing then until we get to Kerry in terms of the region. So not having people at the table, at cabinet or in the European Parliament, having people in senior leadership roles makes a difference. And it means you've got somebody fighting your corner. But just, in terms of, there's a lot of criticism here in terms of, Donegal and the fishing sector. But, since 2020, the Killybegs harbour in the fishing area has been allocated 32 million. So there has been money put in.
Is that not for cruise ships, though? That's not to keep people in their fishing boats. That's so you can document cruise ships.
The Killybegs fishery harbour, they're just in February got over 5 million. So it's not.
So you're saying there is investment happening.
There is investment happening. So it's not all. It's, if you listen to some commentators or some candidates, it's like the misery broadcast. Everything is a crisis. Everything is terrible. I'm not saying we don't have challenges, but it's very easy pick on the local minister or pick out the problems. What are your solutions to this? The first thing we need to do is actually get elected and get in the room so you can make decisions and deliver for your area. What experience do you have to bring to the table? I listened to Peadar Toibin talking. Peadar quite openly says he has no intention of being an MEP.
I was going to ask him that. Yeah.
That's not true. That's not true at all.
You don't want the job, Peadar. You want to go and
no, Lisa, that isn't the case. And so it's important that you don't misrepresent people.
Well, please,
explain to us, Peadar. Then explain to us, because I was going to ask you separately. What is the system?
I've said if I am lucky enough to be elected by the people of Midlands Northwest, I will take the seat in the European Parliament. I've also said that I will stand for the next general election. Now, it is not, nobody knows what the next general election will bring in relation to that. Secondly, 2 of the existing MEPs are alternates at the moment.
No, but just talk about what you're doing, right? So say for instance you win a seat, right? Okay, so that's in June, election called for February, 6 or 7 months. You top the poll in your constituency, return to the Dáil as a TD, hypothetically. Are you a TD or an MEP going forward?
I think, Greg, I'd love if you were the
question. Sorry, can I ask the question that there will be a by-election? The by-election has to happen 6 months after polling, so there'll either be a by-election or a full general election. So that means, Peadar, you're intending to serve for 6 months. Who will be your replacement?
No, I know what I'm saying.
They're not actually voting for you. They're not voting for you.
It's really important that you don't actually misrepresent.
Well, can you just clear? Peadar, we can move forward. You just clearly outline.
Yeah, so I said I'm not going to stand in the by-election in that moment's time. So this is wrong on both of those occasions. So, and this is really important as well. People are also voting for a political party, and the culture of Aontu is radically different than the establishment political parties. The referendums just gone by has shown that. We have a very, very a party that analyzes issues as they come to us, but we also have a moral compass in terms of standing up for what we believe in.
Okay.
We're very cohesive and disciplined in how we deliver that. We don't go out there as independents. We don't go out there as members of Fianna Fáil who are fighting with each other. We go out there as a team to represent people. We are the only political party.
But it might be easier to keep a team on page. Yeah, but I want to bring everyone else in. A quick response, Lisa, please.
Just a quick response. First of all, Peadar talks about the team. He's a party of one TD and he's the only person on the ticket, so that's not exactly a direct comparison. And Peadar has just confirmed the next general election will be March next year at the latest, which means Peadar only intends to be an MEP until next.
Well, he
March.
said no. He said he's not contesting the by-election if there is one. Or
that would be in 6 months. That would be by the end of the year. But the next general election will be by next March.
So just to be clear then, because I'm getting confused now, Peadar, before I go to other people, are you standing in the Dáil elections again, or are you running your full 5-year term in Europe?
Yeah, so I'm it's interesting. First of all, Fianna Fáil did this with Patrick Cope Gallagher.
I know that,
Sam Coveney did it with Fine
Gael.
Matt McCarthy did it with Sinn Féin. And I've said very, very clearly at the start that I am asking people to vote for myself, that this is a platform to change the direction of the country.
And
this election can be a watershed moment for this country.
And
I will be standing in the next general election. The day my nomination was accepted by Aontu, I put that into the press statement because unlike other candidates, I'm being honest.
Right. So then you replace yourself in Europe then with somebody else.
Well, that's the case with every single.
But who is it?
It is a normal situation.
Who's replacing you? If you're who's going to replace you?
Is it your sister, Peadar? Can you
confirm?
So
there's a list of there's a list of 5 people in relation to that. There is Emer Toibin, who's a councillor in Meath. There's also Paul Lawless, who is a rep in Mayo. There's Gráinne McPhillips, who is in Cavan.
Some would say if it's your sister, Peadar, it's kind of more the same of Irish politics, and you're setting out to offer an alternative.
And people will say this, right? The one thing they can't accuse Aontu of is the more of the same in Irish politics. Because we have taken risks for what we believe in over the last period of time. We don't go to referendums, for example, and ask people to vote in one way, and then say that after the referendum that we voted the opposite way. We have a credibility because we stand up for what we believe.
Listen, that's another shot at Lisa, and we'll be here all day if used to. Justin Barrett, do you want to come in there and comment on what we're talking about so far there?
Well, I would be a little bit more honest of Peadar if he would actually say to people that his sister Emer is going to take over in 6 months, rather than giving us a list of 5 names of possibilities. If you vote for Peadar Toibin, you may get this person, you may get that person, you may get the other person, but primarily, he intends at the next general election to be re-elected to Dáil Éireann. If he fails, then he's going to continue in his role as the MEP. If he doesn't, somebody that is not on the ballot paper on June the 7th is going to represent the Aontu seat in the European Parliament. Now, that's fundamentally dishonest of him. He should have put the candidate that is going to sit there for the next 5 years and going to represent his party and represent Ireland and represent Midlands Northwest.
Great. Can I come in there briefly?
Yes, come in, of course.
Yeah, so it's really important that people understand this. Aontu's engagement in politics is to change the direction of the country. We did that in the referendum gone by. It was a watershed moment. Campaigns can change the direction of the country. We are using this campaign to crowbar the bread and butter issues onto the political agenda, because Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens have been completely distracted by issues that are not.
You've made that point. Brian O'Boyle.
And just finally, just if I can just finish. It's not dishonest, because the point is everybody else does it, but they don't say it. We're the only party that's saying it up front.
I think everybody else here in this debate, with the exception of yourself, has the intention,
Justin, you don't know that for 1 second.
I think people
don't know that for 1 second.
Okay, right, Brian O'Boyle, everyone, I want to bring...
I'm talking about people that I don't particularly like here, who have described me already as a snake oil salesman, and don't think of that...
Well, I'll give you an opportunity to reply to that.
But the fact of the matter is every candidate here, other than yourself, has at least the intention. Now, we can never be sure. We can all get run over by a bus literally in the morning. We don't know. But has at least the intention of if they are elected, that they will sit in the European Parliament and represent the people of the Midlands
Brian,
Northwest for the next 5
I hear you.
years.
That point is well made. That point's well made, but I don't want to get caught. I don't want to get. You, Justin, have made your point clearly on that one. I'll come back to you, and I will give you an opportunity to reply to that snake oil salesman comment if you feel that was directed at you. But Brian O'Boyle, I suspect, might reiterate it. Brian, what do you want to say?
Twice if you want me to.
No, you go ahead. You're okay. Did you want to come in on that conversation there?
Look, I mean, the first thing is the people have tuned in to listen, and there are really important issues. I think we've hashed out now where we stand on that issue, and we need to move on to the big issues that are facing.
Well, what is you see as your biggest issue? Let's do it that way then. I don't want to dictate the agenda.
The point I would say, if you come back to the core issue all the time, is actually the problem of the concentration of power and wealth around the 1% in society. That's the big issue. Right, so we had it with the farmers and the fishermen there a minute ago. What we have is, if you look at the housing crisis, or you look at the cost of living crisis, or you look at the inability for so many people to make ends meet while we have vast wealth, it's clear that the wealth exists. You know, the housing crisis is a good example, Greg, right? So on the one hand, you have people who can't pay mortgages or rents, and everyone knows all the issues, but too few people will point out that that's a transfer. High rents is a transfer to somebody. High mortgages is a transfer to somebody. A high cost of living is a transfer to somebody. So some people are benefiting. There's a cost of living bonanza for some people and a crisis for others.
So what could you do? What could you do there?
Why do we have so much? Sorry.
What could you do on those issues as you've highlighted? You know, you get into Europe, like you've your observations, you've a plan. How do you enact that?
Well, look, the first thing to do is to diagnose the problem. So if you look at Europe, it has overseen the decline of the trade union movement, for example, right? If you go back to the 1980s, workers were relatively well paid, right? They had better pensions, they had better terms and conditions, and increasingly workers are now in a more precarious world. I think that's fair to say. So what we would do in People Before Profit is to start from the idea that we need much better protection for workers, and we need to, as Peadar said, that what marks them out is a party of campaigners. I would say People Before Profit have been the main campaigners in this country for 20 years. We've campaigned all around the issues around water charges, around property taxes, around marriage equality, around repealing the 8th Amendment. And far from going back towards a more Christian conservative Ireland, we want to move the country forward. Can MEPs do it on their own? Absolutely not. Can they be important platform makers for funneling issues into the European agenda? I think they can do that, and I think we would want to do that.
Ciaran Mullooly, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I'll get it correct in a moment. Ciaran, what's your view?
Yeah, I mean, just go very briefly back to Peadar's situation. You know, the candidates are going before the people and offering their qualities, their ability to speak, to negotiate, to put a policy together, to implement, to achieve things. I think I stand before the people based on my own record in community development over 30 years and bringing together projects up to 10 million euro. Peadar is still being a bit evasive with regard to his situation. If it is the number one substitute, if it's Emer, that's his sister, who is a councillor, which is absolutely fine, then I think we should be made aware.
There's a list of 5. The replacement list is a list of 5 as outlined by Peadar. Amongst them is his sister. But I mean, he can't sit here. I presume, Peadar, you could not sit here and confirm that's the case, and then the other 4 people would have to be all complicit in it or not care.
So
I mean, that's not realistic.
And the point is here, though, politics is not just about individuals. It's about ideas. It's about cohesion. We have a situation, for example, with Independent Ireland, where Ciaran Mullooly is at odds with Michael Collins. When Ciaran Mullooly's asked questions about Michael Collins' views on X, Y, and Z, Ciaran goes, no, I don't agree with those issues. Actually, I'm an independent. And then on other levels, he says he's part of a political party. So, what I'm trying to say is, if we really want to change Ireland, we need to do it with ideas. We need to do it with a different political culture. And we need a well-organized organization, a grassroots group around the country to do that. And that's what Aontu has built over the last 5 years. And no other political party represents that. We have people who are standing because they're celebrities. We have people who are standing because they haven't got a chance, of getting back into the mainstream of their own political parties, etc. I am doing this as a campaigner. I am taking a risk because I believe
Listen,
the day
I want to give come back in, Ciaran. Come back in, Ciaran, because Peadar's had quite a lot of time. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Peadar, one moment.
He's had 3 opportunities.
Yes, but that's because all of you keep having a go at him, and then he has to respond. So if you could all get your have a goes at him in at one time, I can break it up a bit more evenly.
Well, just to conclude it, Greg, I mean, last night this situation became ridiculous because Peadar has told us his sister is going to be the candidate after the general election in terms of the MEP situation. Last night, candidates like myself and Brian were denied a place on national television debate so that the person who's not going to represent them as an MEP for 5 years
one last response
could talk.
Well, that's probably an issue with RG. That's probably an issue with RG.
I won't go beyond this.
Yeah. But people like Ciaran, it's absolutely
like Ciaran would like
you have a choice of number
Ciaran,
one. Who is your number one?
You're making the same point in different ways.
But
go ahead.
People like Ciaran would rather have this debate about Peadar Toibin. I would rather have this debate about the fact that we are living in a Dublin-centric economy, that most of the political establishment can't see beyond the M50, that we have a Western rail corridor that the government won't invest in, that would actually breathe new life into the Northwest, that we need an A5 road that's upgraded so people can get into Donegal, that we need a connection with Derry in terms of a rail line. That's the transformative element of Irish politics.
Yeah, but that's not... You came in to respond to Ciaran Mullooly on something else.
He's changing the goalpost again.
Yeah, okay. But listen, do you know what? For everybody, for me, whatever, the answer is often the answer, whether you believe it's an answer or not. Brian Boyle, you know, some of the issues you've raised, some of the things that you think are key issues, you believe there's a bit of a distraction going on here, and maybe an important issue like migration, and correct me if I'm paraphrasing you in any way incorrectly, is really used because it's easy for us to get our heads around. You saw that in Brexit, right? Brexit was so incredibly complex, and then everyone just focused on immigration, and it became really quite simple. Do you think that's being employed by some to sort of mask over some of the bigger, more complicated issues?
I do, I certainly do, but I do think it's worth starting by saying that there are genuine anger and genuine concerns out there that we have to acknowledge for people. You know, there is a housing crisis that has gone on for 10 or 15 years. It's very understandable that people would expect and deserve to have a secure home. You know, so if you look at all the various crises that have happened, the anger is absolutely reasonable, right? What I am concerned about, though, is that the question of immigration has been completely distorted away from fact, okay? So we have, well, I think it's 650,000 people in Ireland who weren't born here, okay? And any economic survey will tell you that they have added more to the Irish economy than they've taken in any sort of welfare payments or any subsidies or anything like that. So, you know, when you conflate the housing crisis with with immigration, that first of all to me is it's a simplification and a distortion. That's the first thing, right? So it's possible to solve the housing crisis. The government has an 8 billion surplus this year. We in People Before Profit have consistently said, use a national state construction company. We could use that for retrofitting as well, for example. You know, the ESB is a perfect example of when you have an enormous problem, you solve it using a visionary state move, and we haven't seen any of that. So I do accept that there's lots of crises in the country, right? And the immigration question is then used, as you say, as a kind of a catch-all, and it's used for political gain.
But just in terms of a direct question.
What I would call far right politics that want to say, you know, all sorts of stuff.
There's an awful lot of but there's an awful lot of people listening and watching this debate that have concerns that would not like to be labelled far right either. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the inward immigration into Ireland, the immigration into Ireland, in terms of numbers, the government in the last couple of days admitted that you can double the figure they had out there recently. We've got a serious issue with people coming across the border, people getting on off planes without documents. There's an awful lot of fear and concern out there. Do you believe we need to change our policy? Do you believe we need to reduce the numbers? Do you believe we need to toughen up?
I mean, toughen up. I mean, the point is, right, we need to dispel people's fear. We need to listen to people, absolutely. And you're right to distinguish between people, the vast majority of whom have genuine concerns, and a small minority of people like Justin Barrett who want to actually take that and weaponize that into anti-immigrant sentiment. That's the difference I would make. So I've no problem in calling out the far right, but I don't think everybody in Ireland who has concerns about migration falls into that category. So that's a useful distinction to make. The question of how we treat our fellow human beings, I think, is a very fundamental question. And the first thing we need to do is get beyond fear by having genuine conversations about the contribution that people make. That's the first thing we need to do. The second thing is take the people on Mount Street or whatever. People by and large in much worse situations than any of the six of us, right? Fleeing really bad situations, traumatized people.
Yeah, a lot
do
of
we
them.
want a country that?
Yeah, but just
I'm
not being argumentative.
I'm not being. People in that situation should be left on the street or harassed or criminalized, or do we say there are 166,000 open properties that are vacant at the moment in the state? The state should be taking responsibility for its fellow human beings.
But we have the government's own figures saying with the government saying that 80% of those at least are actually leaving Britain, coming into Ireland through the north to actually escape the Rwanda bill. So we use
where did they go? Why did they go to England in the first place, Greg? Yeah, that just goes back one step. Clearly, you're asking for a serious conversation.
No, 100%.
So Irish people have left Ireland in their droves, particularly from Donegal.
Okay, Justin,
it's true, isn't it?
I'm going to bring out.
My brother's an economic migrant, for example. He lost his job in the crash. Wasn't his fault. Went to Australia to make a better life for himself. He shouldn't be criminalised.
Everyone's going to come in on this. Justin, Barrett, you wanted to reply there.
I think, first of all, it's very difficult to discuss economics with somebody whose fundamental axiom and principle is that all property is theft. And when you start talking to somebody like that, and they start saying to you, everybody has a right to own their own house, you have to call them out on the lie. All property is theft. That is Marxist theory. You know that as well as I do. It is Marxist. It is.
No one ever said all property is theft. What they say is that the means of production should be owned collectively by the people. Nobody thinks we go around and take everybody's houses off them. What do you think? I'm in politics for 20 years to take people's houses off them. Give me a break.
Yeah, so we're going to collectively.
Let's be clear then. So you're clear. Nobody on the left wants to take anybody's family home off them. In fact, we campaigned for 20 years to make sure everybody has a family home. What we want is the wealth of Ireland and the world to be used.
Okay, go ahead.
We own everything
beyond that point, Justin. Beyond that point, though. Yeah. Beyond that point.
Because we all own it collectively. So how much belongs to Peadar of the fridge behind you? How much belongs to Ciaran? How much belongs to Lisa? This is ridiculous. The idea that you can own things collectively.
Okay.
You can own things personally. Private property is extremely important. And then you have somebody who's talking about in economics. There is a distribution of wealth in this country which is unfair. And it's unfair in exactly the way that Brian is attempting to say, which is that there is a funneling towards the upper 1%. But he is opposed to all property, and he needs to be honest about that. And the second thing he needs to be honest about when he's talking about immigration is you cannot have unlimited immigration. And that's what we have right now, because there's a simple law of economics that he knows damn well, which is the law of supply and demand. If you have a certain amount of supply, but an endless amount of demand.
Can I ask, Justin? Do you have any acceptable level of immigration?
Yes, of course, there's an acceptable level of immigration. There's an acceptable level of immigration which is at the point where it is of benefit to Ireland and the Irish people.
Right, Peadar, you wanted to come in, and then we're going to go to Ciaran and then Lisa. Peadar?
Yeah, so I think the problem is most people don't believe in the two extremes in this debate. I think most people actually lie in the middle in relation to this. And I think, Aontu has again been showing, Aontu has been showing again that we have been listening to people on this. We were the first Dáil party to raise this as a significant issue. We actually demanded, 5 years ago that the political establishment needs to have a discussion about this, because it was happening in people's kitchens and sitting rooms. And if we don't have a discussion around this, it will just get pushed underground to the ne'er-do-wells who would look to use it for negative reasons. So again, most of the information that's in the public domain has actually been brought out there by Aontu. Our parliamentary questions have shown that 85% of the people coming into this country who get deportation orders are never deported by the government. Our parliamentary questions show that 5,000 people came through Dublin Airport last year without a passport. The issue of people travelling from north to the south, it was our parliamentary questions that forced that information out of the minister. And the government minister actually admitted to us that for 75% of the people who are currently registering for asylum in this state, the government is not even asking how they come into the country. Now, that is an absolute,
But Peadar, you talk about the conversation, right? And a lot of the work that you've done, and I think people have seen that. But the people that you were sort of maybe that were supporting your party, as soon as the posters started going up with candidates from different backgrounds, migrant backgrounds, or what have you, I did notice on social media, and it's a small enough percentage of the population, though, that a lot of the people that thought that you guys were worth backing all of a sudden turned on you very quickly. It seemed.
Well, no, I don't agree with that. I think that's the wrong analysis. And I'll tell you, first of all, I will say there are many people who are from other countries who are working in Ireland who make really valuable contributions to this country. And we have always been of the belief that the colour of a person's skin is of no more significance than the colour of their eyes, and that everybody has to be treated equally. And we have selected people, good people, who support our policies for elections. There's an awful lot of bots on social media. People that you look at maybe have 30 followers set up in February 2022. And they all land, unfortunately, like a swarm on particular posts. They are not representative of the people at all.
Sorry, Justin, what were you saying there? Most
people want to see a stricter system.
I get you. All right, and we'll get to that. Justin, what were you shouting over?
Aontu is running foreigners. That's what people are objecting to.
What is wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
Because the Irish people don't want to be ruled by foreigners.
But who's Irish? Do you have to have Irish parents?
Historic.
But what is Irish? But Justin, what's your definition of Irish? Is it Irish parents, born in Ireland?
Ethnically Irish.
Can I come back on that? Because it's really important to come back on that. Can I come back?
Peadar, when he says he's the only one who dealt with this, he has raised a number of minor questions.
Sorry.
Okay, Justin, before we go off to something else, I just want him to be able to reply. I want to be able
to... I just give an example. I'll give an example. One of the candidates that's standing for us is a guy called Liam Reichenberg. His parents came from Germany. Some of his antecedents were killed in the concentration camps in Germany. They emigrated to New York, and one of them met a girl from South Armagh. They married. Liam was called after Liam Mellows. He came home to Ireland every summer of his youth. He went to college in UCD in 1992. He's been living in Ireland for 30 years. People like Justin Barrett have been on social media and saying that this guy is a Jewish foreign banker standing for elections. Like, it's surreal, some of the stuff.
Yeah, okay. Well, listen, I don't want to necessarily amplify that. I think most people don't really mind.
Stand for elections.
Isn't it a fact, Peadar,
briefly,
you voted in Dáil Éireann to reverse the Irish people's decision in the citizenship referendum?
No, it's not the fact that that's the case. What I did was the decision of the referendum was to leave the decision in the Dáil, and that the Dáil would have the rights to make a decision.
I want to go on. I want to. Yeah, of course. Okay. Kieran, I want to come to you on this, and then I want to come to Lisa. Go ahead. Not briefly. Take your time, because I really want.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Greg. Can I just drag all this back down to the reality of what's going on in County Donegal? On my visits to the county, this issue has come up on a couple of different occasions. And I've shared with voters in the county my own experience. I worked with the Ukrainian community in County Roscommon after the conflict 2 years ago. I've worked with them for 2 years. Over 120,000 people have come in here. The Irish people responded with the most outstanding compassion to what was going on. They embraced the situation. We worked together to provide a home. But then what happened? Approximately 6 months ago, the HSE rang me and called me and said, Ciaran, we know you helped out in terms of the Ukrainian community, but we cannot get a GP in your local area to provide the support to them or to the local people anymore. And at that point, I was one of the people who said, listen, we have to basically get a grip on the situation. We have to look at what we can provide, how much support we can provide. We must be there to support people fleeing conflict and war. But we also must ensure that we can accommodate both people coming in and local people. And if there are no places in the national school in Ardra or Letterkenny available, what can we do? What is the point of bringing in?
Well, what happens to the argument? What happens then to the argument that these people are fleeing desperate situations, fleeing for their lives? Do you park that because the schools full?
No, I think you look at the statistics in terms of what's happened. The 120,000 has happened. It's over. In recent weeks, we're actually told that in many weeks more people were leaving the country. Ukrainians were leaving the country to coming in. Look, that's 120,000. Look at the international protection situation, which is quite different. Michael McDougall, in fairness to him, has done considerably research with regard to the numbers coming in there. We're talking 20 to 30,000 people, and he's looked carefully at the situation with regard to the Department of Justice. He's made the point, and I tend to agree with him, that at the end of the Department of Justice is not doing its job here. If somebody comes in fleeing conflict, fleeing a war situation in genuine circumstances, their case should be adjudicated on within 90 days. Within 90 days. We cannot have a situation where we allow the numbers to pile up.
So are you saying, do you think the EU, do you think the EU,
whether they're going to have a home,
whether
they're going to be in a tent, where they're going to be?
A lot of
I would make the point, Greg, to you, if I could just finish the point. I could make the point to you that at the end of the day, people need to know where they're going to be living. They need to they should be told when they arrive here. If you haven't got a passport going into Australia or going into the United States, as Brian talked about a while ago, you won't be staying.
The problem is one of the problems is Ciaran,
if there are economic migrants, then I'm afraid that attitude has to be taken.
But you see, the problem here is, as you see,
those are the genuine situations.
The problem here is there's thousands of people in Donegal with defective concrete blocks that they themselves aren't being given any assurance as to where they're living, and I think that's why it's such a hot topic up here. These people aren't racist or anti anyone. They're just saying, well, what are we going to do? Lisa Chambers, what's your views on how we deal with this issue? And is the EU Migration Pact the tool to have the quick turnaround of groups and what have you, or what?
Yeah, thank Greg. Look, I think it's fair to say that this is definitely one of the top issues coming up in the campaign. It's not the only issue, so I would say beware of any candidate running on a single issue. There's a bigger picture out there, and the European Parliament does more than deal with just the migration challenge. But notwithstanding that, it is an issue on the ground. And I would always say, and I said this to the Fianna Fáil Parliamentary Party more than a year ago, if we start branding people far left or far right, or telling ordinary middle ground people that they can't talk about an issue, we will drive them to the fringes. So, the middle ground centrist politicians do need to deal with this. I think what people are looking for is a fair and firm system that's humane, that is rules-based, and people know where they stand. There has to be an acknowledgement that in the last 2 years, we have seen numbers coming into the country that we could never have foreseen, mainly because of the war in Ukraine. So that no government could have anticipated the extraordinary numbers that we are dealing with and the pressure that that's putting on accommodation. I am on record, again, more than a year ago, saying that I believe there should be a fair distribution of people coming into the country, that it can't all be into the West and Northwest, where property is cheaper, where there's more vacancy, and the use of hotel accommodation. I've been on your show, Greg, even talking about this before. It's a particular bugbear of mine because it's impacting our tourism sector when the budget hotels, the 3-star hotels, the guest houses are not available for tourists. And that impacts the pub, the restaurant, the coffee shop.
Lisa, that's your government that's doing all of that.
Can you let me say my piece? Stop.
No, but I'm just saying, you're not in opposition, Lisa. You're the government that's doing this.
Okay, just let Lisa have her say.
I'm interested in serving as an MEP for the full term. You're not even saying you don't even want the job.
Well, no, come here, Lisa. That's only going to trigger a response. So you can't eat your cake and still have it, Lisa. So don't respond with a dig, and then he's going to come back in. Carry on. Behave yourselves.
I'd say he started it. Anyways, we'll get back to the migration topic. Look, the numbers are very high. I think we have to be honest about how we deal with this. When I hear comparisons to Australia, we are bordering another jurisdiction. That's just a fact of it. We know that we've got a challenge with the UK government. I've written to Michelle O'Neill in Northern Ireland to ask her what she's going to do in terms of assessing what the North can do, because the entry points into Northern Ireland are clearly the pinch point. Yes, our own department needs to process people quicker. If you are entitled to asylum, you have to get it. If you're not, you should be deported. I'm also on record as saying if somebody commits a serious offence, they should be deported as well without any question. So I do think there's...
But why is the government not doing that, Lisa? I mean, not to pick up on Peadar's point there. I mean, I get what you're saying. I know the listeners will go, my word, she's talking an awful lot of sense, Lisa Chambers there. But if it seems so obvious and that's the solution, and that's what the people want, and that would actually probably give the government a fair chance of getting re-elected, then why aren't they doing the common sense stuff that you seem to be talking? Is there a reason for that? Pull back the wizard's curtain and let us know.
Yeah, well, look, I suppose it's easy to list out the things we have to do, but these, I suppose, don't take it that this is simple to fix, or right, that it's a simple challenge to deal with. It's not. It's complicated. It's costly.
Okay.
And we were in the
Peadar, just one more. No, I want to bring Brian in because I just have a sense. I'm not timing it exactly. I have just a sense that Brian's not getting quite as much time. Or perhaps he is. Go ahead, Lisa. Finish your point, then Brian, then Peadar.
What I'd say on the government response is that we were in an emergency phase initially. The numbers coming in were so far beyond what anybody could have foreseen. But I think we are moving into the more medium term now and managing it. The processing time needs to get quicker. We know that. We need to send people back that should not be here. But we have to have a humane approach as well to people coming in.
Lisa is Mighty Mouse and Mayo and Minnie
Brian
Mouse in Dublin. Like, it's incredible. Like, you know, she talks the talk.
1 second, Peadar. 1 second. I'll bring you back in, Peadar. I'll bring you back in. Brian O'Boyle, please. Just start shouting over everyone, Brian. It makes it easy for me coming to you.
The first thing I would say is, you know, the idea that there are two extremes, I just want to challenge that idea. Like, on the left, we're proud when what we might have is extreme compassion, maybe. In other words, what we're trying to say is that there's people who are in really difficult situations, and we owe it to ourselves as a society and to those people to actually treat them humanely, and to, you know, if you have the resources available, use them. As we've said, there are 160,000 properties empty in the state. This is a vastly wealthy country. There's €1 trillion worth of private wealth.
But P.B.P did have they did bring to the Dáil, though, a motion to effectively be able to take that property from people and to use it. I've looked at it. I don't have the exact wording, and it's often actually blamed on Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, but it was actually people before profit. I think Mr. Barrett brought forward a motion to be able to take control of that unused property.
Now, first of all, Justin Barrett's going to jump all over me, so maybe just mute him for a minute.
No, carry on. Go on,
Brian, right?
Carry on.
The point I'd make is that we are for people having more economic control of their lives, not less. So small farmers, small fishermen, family homeowners have nothing to worry about from the left. We want them to have more control, not less, of their, what you want to call property or whatever, you know, in order to be able to live decent, dignified lives. In that situation, you're balancing rights, aren't you, Greg? Between, let's say, somebody who has 5 or 6 or 12 properties that are actually sitting on a market, trying to allow them to increase in value, and you have people who have no home. And in that context, nobody would take anything. What you would do is you would give a fair market price for those properties and move them into use.
Compulsory purchase, though.
And that's for the common good.
It'd be a compulsory purchase of private property.
Well, compulsory purchase happens all the time for the common good.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying what it is.
That children don't live on the streets.
Justin, what do you think of that idea?
Well, first of all, the properties he's talking about, largely speaking, are derelict. And so we're not talking about properties that you simply could move people into straight away. And yes, he's talking about, when he talks about a vast number, he's talking about the 160,000. You can talk about emergency compulsory purchase orders in certain situations and very narrow situations. The Constitution is very clear about the very narrow situations in which that can be used. But you're talking about expanding that to 160,000 properties that are going to be compulsorily purchased, and then somehow we're going to find the taxpayers' money and we're going to spend them on doing them up for so that foreigners can live in them. Ireland is a small country. And as a small country, we can make our contribution to the world. But what we cannot do is solve all the problems.
I get you. Just in relation to the use of...
there must be a limitation.
I get you. And you've made that point. Just in relation to that, a couple of people have texted in, Justin, for a brief response for you. You talked about the use of taxpayers' money to repair movable property. 100% redress for those affected by defective concrete blocks. Would you support that? At EU level, do you believe that the peoples whose houses are crumbling around them should be restored to their original condition at the taxpayer's expense?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And the reason why is that the government were responsible for allowing onto the market the faulty building materials.
Okay, that's fine. That's okay. That's clear.
Why.
Listen,
it's not a gift. It's not a gift to
Ciaran Mullooly
to restore them to the
I get you. And I wasn't conflating the two issues. It was just I wanted to ask you that before we finished.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Ciaran.
Yeah, well, since you have mentioned it, Greg, during my visits to the county, I've had the opportunity to go and look at the reality of the mica situation in places like Dunfanny and Convoy. And I think actually the situation is moving on, but I support the right to get the 100% compensation. But I think the situation has moved on into a much more dangerous situation. The families I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks have got the approval, some of them for the entire 100% rebuild of their home, up to €340,000, yet they've now got an estimate from the builder for €440,000. And the same thing has happened in Ireland that always happens. And I've been involved in community and grant aid situations for many, many years. When somebody hears that the state are providing a grant, guess what? The estimates and the quotes go up for some peculiar reason. So what I'm calling for today in relation to this, I think we need an independent arbitrator at local authority level to look at those quotations and to look at that very, very carefully so we can get those homes rebuilt for those families, end their distress as soon as possible, and not have them waiting with this huge bill at the end of the day.
Right, let's go, Dan. And there's so much we can't get through, like neutrality and other type of stuff. Paddy, do you want final word on that? I think you're well on the record.
Listen, Mary T. Sweeney and others have been very involved in the campaign in Donegal for a long period of time. I've spoken at the protests in Dublin. We have supported this 100%. Many people don't have the 100 grand extra that they need now to build those homes. And some people are even looking to downscale the size of their homes to be able to afford to build it. And that's causing problems with planning permission. And the government needs to open up an office properly in the location so people can engage and get this sorted out. You know, the engineers are saying that the foundations need to be altered, but the council is writing over them and saying, well, a visual inspection of the foundations is all that's needed. You know, this is basically as a result of the deregulation of the Fianna Fáil government back in the day to help out their friends in the building industry. And we need to make sure that all construction industry is properly relegated.
I better ask everyone the question, actually. Brian O'Boyle, I'll put the same question to you. Dr. Brian O'Boyle. Brian Boyle, sorry.
I went up to the most recent meeting. There was 1,300 people in the room. And the anger of people and the sense of being left behind is unbelievable up there. I mean, they have a people's document now, and it's very, very basic rights that they're looking for. 100% redress, nobody to be left behind, and that there's a proper inquiry, because that's the other thing. We need to know exactly how these people were left in such dire situations. And Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael really should hang their heads in shame, because what they've told the population is that this problem has more or less been solved. We've agreed to a 100% redress scheme. But when you actually ask ordinary people on the ground, they can't get the money for boundary walls, they can't get money for foundations. Then there, as others have said, the inflation costs are not being properly accounted for. And so it's a scandal. And it's really important that I say that, because people want to caricature us that we only care about foreign people. We care absolutely about everybody who's struggling with a housing crisis, whether it's people in homelessness, Micah people, or people who are living on the streets.
All right, Brian, it's been interesting as we wrap up to hear your views too. Lisa Chambers, I suppose I better ask you as well. You know, many within your party believe that this enhanced scheme, it's a good scheme, it's a workable scheme, it is 100%. Do you believe it goes far enough? Would you like to see it revisited and actually deliver 100% redress for the people affected?
Yes, like I do think it's factually correct to say it's a better scheme than what was there. It is improved, but look, it's the Micah and Pirate situation is in Mayo as well, where I live, so I'm very familiar with it, mainly in North Mayo, where my husband is, and so I personally know a lot of affected homeowners, and I know how stressful and horrific the situation has been for people. And I visited homes as well, where I've seen the cracks in houses and that, so I really am very familiar with it. And I do think there's certainly something to be looked at around the inflation cost around business, because again, we couldn't have foreseen the increase in the cost of materials and labour that's happened the last 3-4 years. It's been astronomical. You know, like sheets of plywood have gone up, concrete, everything.
Yeah, so you believe the scheme should be enhanced to take account of that?
I think that has to be looked at, because it just isn't the same. It's not the same, that the information and the data that was been dealt with putting the scheme together, it's changed now. But like the business, the cost of building stuff, because, well, for lots of reasons, I mean, the war in Ukraine impacted supply chains, but just there's been a huge, and anyone building a house at the minute will tell you, you know, they're very difficult to get quotes on material.
Well, it is up for review. It's up for review, so we'll see if it will accommodate that. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much. Very much enjoyed it. And I, as a radio listener and as a voter, feel better informed. Lisa Chambers of Fianna Fáil, thank you for your time. Dr. Brian O'Boyle, People for Profit, Peadar Toibin of Aontu, Ciaran Mullooly of the non-party, Justin Barrett, the National Party. All of you, thank you so very much indeed. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Okay.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
It's been lovely having you all. Okay. That was our second panel, our Midlands Northwest constituency EU debates. Interesting. Let us know what you think. You can comment or send in messages to us. Share this out to those who may have not seen it. It might inform them. We're back with another EU debate after 12 tomorrow. And we're back with our next local debate during the 9 till noon show at 10 o'clock tomorrow. But for me, Greg Hughes, and all of the